So sale, exchange, transfer, any type of movement of goods and services for a consideration in furtherance of business is the first clause. Three conditions satisfied, then it will be regarded as supply. Then with respect to import of services for consideration, whether or not in furtherance of business. So even if it is for personal use, it will be considered as a supply. For this, you can remember OIDAR services or the services provided by entities like Canva, etc. Okay. Like if you are getting your resume ready using Canva, you take a 1 day subscription and then you prepare your resume. For that subscription, even though it is not in furtherance of business, it is an import of service for a consideration. So it comes under the purview of GST. It qualifies as a supply of service. Okay. And then the third one, that is 7(1)(c), deemed supply. That is items which are mentioned under Schedule 1 even without consideration. That is, two conditions are satisfied. There is a movement of goods and services. It is in furtherance of business, but there is no consideration involved. This is with respect to related party transaction, distinct person transaction. Okay, these are the major items that will come under deemed supply. We will just go through the Schedule 1 also. Okay, one of the most important section. This you have to be clear. Supply, three conditions. Movement of goods and services by way of sale, barter, transfer, etc. There is a consideration involved. Okay, consideration can be monetary or in monetary terms also. Then in course and in furtherance of business. Exceptions to this is under 7(1)(b) and 7(1)(c). The first exception is no consideration in, first exception is import of services for a consideration. The last clause is not complied with, whether or not in furtherance of business. The second exception is with respect to related party transactions, that is deemed supply, which is mentioned under Schedule 1, for which consideration is not there. Even though consideration is not there, there is no actual consideration movement involved, it will be considered as a supply. Then 7(1) capital A. It deals with activities as either supply of goods or supply of services. So what is supply of goods and what is supply of services? That is covered in Schedule 2. So Schedule 1 is deemed supply. Schedule 2 is dividing the activities as supply of goods and supply of services. Okay. Schedule 3 is negative list. Items which are outside the purview of GST, they are not considered as a supply. These items are not considered as supply. So you have Schedule 1, which is deemed supply. Schedule 2, what is supply of goods and what is supply of service. And Schedule 3 is negative list. Negative list means those items, those transactions which is not considered as supply. If it is not a supply, GST is not applicable. Correct? So GST to apply, the first condition to be satisfied is that that particular transaction should be a supply. Then only GST is applicable. Okay, so exceptions, you should be very thorough because you will be given scenarios, different scenarios, and in the case study, and you will be asked to identify whether it is a supply or not. Okay, so you can be given a particular scenario where Mr. X imported goods for consideration, but it was not in furtherance of business, whether it is a supply or not. So this particular exception is with respect to import of service. So what are the two exceptions? Import of service for a consideration, whether or not in furtherance of business. You can remember an example like this, OIDAR services. Then Schedule 1 services, which is a deemed supply, even though there is no consideration involved, it will be considered as a supply. So related party, parent subsidiary company, or two branches when there is a transfer between two branches. Okay, one branch is in Tamil Nadu, one branch is in Andhra Pradesh. There is a movement of goods. You will have to pay tax. When there is a movement of goods from one state to another, you have to pay IGST. Okay, but will there be an actual movement of consideration between two branches? Whether the branch A will actually pay the amount to branch B, it will not happen, right? So it is a deemed supply. It is assumed. So even though the consideration payment is not there, it is assumed or it is deemed that there is a payment and it is considered as a supply. So related party, distinct person. Distinct person means branches, two branches or two entities of the, two branches or two different departments of the same entity in different states is regarded as a distinct person. So easy way to remember, you can just remember it as a branch of the same entity. Okay. So under deemed supply under schedule 1, we will see what are the items that are covered. Like I said, related party, distinct person, it is already covered. Okay, related persons and distinct person. And other than that, agent, principal, they are also like a related party, like agent and principal. So that is also covered. Permanent transfer and disposal of assets where ITC has been availed on such asset will be treated as a supply. This is the first condition of deemed supply. So if you have availed ITC when you purchased goods, when you purchased capital goods, asset. Okay, I bought a computer for which I availed an ITC of 5,000 rupees. I got it on 6/8/2025. Okay, 6/9/2025. I am giving it for free. I'm not charging anything. I'm saying I'm giving it for free to another entity, maybe a charitable institution. Okay. So this 5,000 rupees ITC, I have availed the benefit of 5,000 rupees. I have paid less, 5,000 rupees less when I was depositing the tax to government in the for the month of August. So next month, when I am selling or when I am transferring this particular computer to another institution, and I'm saying that I did not take any money, so it is zero. The taxable value, the outward supply is I mean the value of outward supply is zero, so the tax should also be zero. Then the government is losing on this 5,000 rupees, which I took as a credit. So permanent transfer or disposal of assets where ITC has been availed will be treated as a supply. Okay, there is separate provisions on how the tax will be computed and how the value will be taken. But this concept you have to remember. If an asset, you have purchased an asset for which you have availed an ITC at the time of its scrap or at the time of its transfer or sale, whatever is at the time of its outward supply, you will have to reverse the appropriate amount of ITC. And this particular concept is because it is covered under Schedule 1, deemed supply. Okay, related party, distinct person, we have discussed. Agent, principal, same as related parties. Okay, they are also related parties. So agent and principal, also supply of goods between agent and principal is also covered under deemed supply. So even though consideration is not involved, if it is in furtherance of business, then you will have to, it is considered as a supply, and accordingly the GST rates will be applicable. Import of services by a person from a related person or any other establishment outside India in course or in furtherance of business. So when there is an import of service, again, import of services, okay, from a related person in course or furtherance of business. So no consideration is involved. All the other conditions satisfied, it will be considered as a supply. Okay, that is with respect to deemed supply. So we have seen the three conditions which are the first important condition, which has three sections, that is sale, exchange, and for a consideration in furtherance of business. These three conditions satisfied, it will be a supply. Exceptions to the condition with respect to import of services for a consideration whether or not in furtherance of business, or even if it is for personal use, it will be considered as a supply. Deemed supply is where there is a supply in focus and in furtherance of business, but no consideration is involved, like related party and distinct person. Now, Schedule 2. Schedule 2 defines what activities are considered as supply of goods and what should be regarded as supply of service. Okay. General principle that you can have a logical reasoning or a logical principle to identify the transaction is just check if the property or the title of goods and services are, the goods are being transferred or not. Okay, if the title is transferred, it will be supply of goods. Any movable goods, like all your consumables, there is a transfer of title in the goods. When you pay the money and I am buying a pen, I am paying money to the shopkeeper, I am getting the pen is mine. The title of the goods have been transferred. So wherever the title is transferred, you can say it is a supply of goods. Where the property in the goods or the title of the goods is not being transferred, then it will be supply of services. So if this condition is not there, it will be supply of service. This is the overall concept of Schedule 2. We have different items in that, like for different like land and building and treatment processes. Each of the items, they have defined whether it is a supply of goods or supply of services, but the basic concept remains this. In case of land and building, any repairs, maintenance work, the title is not being transferred. The land and building, the building remains with you, and the repairs and work is in the nature of service. The title of the goods are not being transferred, so we can say that it is a supply of service. Treatment and processes being done, it is also a supply of service, because again, if you're doing a job work on a particular item, the title of the goods remains with somebody else only. You're doing some modifications or some changes to that product. So it is a supply of service. Okay, and GST covers only movable property. Immovable property are outside the purview of GST. Land and building, a completed building is not, it is not under the purview of GST, because it covers only, GST is for movable property. Okay, movable goods and services. So services, so any kind of alterations or modifications to an immovable property will by default come under supply of service. Because the title is not getting transferred, it will come under supply of service. This is Schedule 2. Then Schedule 3. Schedule 3 is negative list items, which are not considered as a supply. If it is not considered as a supply, GST also will not apply. So Schedule 3, employer and employee services, employer and employee services, except gift up to 50,000. You have to remember the threshold limit. The gift up to 50,000 is in a financial year will not be treated as supply of goods and services or both. If it is above 50,000, then that will come under supply. Salary paid to an employee, any kind of other payments to the employee will not be treated as a supply. Then services by court, tribunal, services provided by people who hold positions as per the constitution, then services of a funeral burial ceremony, including transportation of deceased. So these are the important ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Sixth, sale of land and sale of building. So sale of land is an immovable property, right? Immovable property being sold. So it is outside the purview of GST. Actionable claims. Actionable claims means bill of exchange. Okay. Bills, etc., can be regarded as actionable claims. Actionable claims, there is an exception. The exception is lottery, betting, gambling, horse race, online gaming. All this are covered under GST. So what is actionable claim? Actionable claims are more like bill of exchange. There is a claim upon the happening of an event. Bill of exchange you are payable at the end of 90 days. So it is an actionable claim. On the happening of an event, the claim gets due. So they are. It is more like monetary dealings. So it is kept under outside the purview of GST. Then supply of goods from a non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory. So the goods are not entering India. So it is kept outside the purview of GST. That is like merchant trading, out and out transactions. That is from a non-taxable territory to another non-taxable territory. Okay. So the goods are moving from USA to Singapore. Maybe the booking is done from India, but the goods move from USA to Singapore. So it is kept outside the purview of GST. Supply of warehoused goods before clearance. When the goods are imported, okay, at the time of clearance, customs duty, IGST, everything will get payable. So before clearance, any type of movement of goods from one person to another, it is not covered under GST because at the final time of clearance, GST will be calculated, customs will be calculated. Okay, so these are the exceptions or the negative list items. 8 items are there. You need to remember the items: employer and employee, court, tribunal, funeral services, sale of land, actionable claims, out and out transactions, that is from non-taxable to another non-taxable territory, and the goods which are warehoused till the point of clearance. These are negative list items. It will be considered as no supply items, so GST will not apply to these. Then other than that, there are two things that you have to note. This is also very important from exam point of view, very tricky part. Activities or transaction not considered as supply, clarified through circulars. Interstate movement of modes of conveyances between distinct persons, including trains, buses, trucks, carrying passengers or both, except in cases when such movement is for further supply of goods and services. Okay, when there is an interstate movement of modes of conveyances, trucks or conveyance, any kind of truck, bus, tanker, okay, that is moving from uh, one branch to another branch for the purpose of carrying goods and services. So one branch is in Tamil Nadu, one branch is in Andhra Pradesh. A truck is starting from Tamil Nadu to Andhra Pradesh, picking up the goods, and then it is coming to Tamil Nadu again. So the first movement of goods the first movement of truck from Tamil Nadu to Andhra Pradesh will not be considered as a supply. We cannot consider the movement of truck as a supply. because the movement is for the purpose of getting the goods from the branch back to Tamil Nadu. So this will be a supply because there is a movement of goods. But the first part of the activity, which is the movement of truck, will not be considered as a supply. Interstate movement of tools, spares, jigs, and all goods on wheels will not be treated as supply. Tools, spares, and rigs. So if you are moving, if a truck is moving from one state to another, if it has some tools, jigs, spares, it will not be considered as a supply. Okay. So these two exceptions, please note it because it is a good chance you might get in MCQ or it might get a question in the case study also. Then we come to composite supply, mixed supply. Composite supply are supply of goods which are naturally bundled, whereas mixed supply is forcefully bundled. Okay, composite is natural and mixed is forcefully bundled. Like Diwali gift box. We can say if it has sweets and snacks and savories or everything put together in a basket, it is a mixed supply because you can sell each of the items separately also. It has been forcefully bundled. Composite supply. Transport with insurance. When you're transporting goods from one entity to another, and insurance is also required. So transport of goods along with then an insurance cover, we can say it is a composite supply. It is naturally bundled. Okay. And so these, if in case of composite supply, the rate will be the rate of principal supply, whatever is the principal supply. If the principal supply is the transport, then the rate of transportation of goods, what is the GST rate? In case of GTA service, the GTA service GST rate will apply. In case of mixed supply, highest rate will apply. Okay, so composite supply, principal rate will apply. Whatever is the principal supply, that supplies GST rate will apply. And in case of mixed supply, highest rate will apply. Okay. So here in case of you have been given a lot of examples in your book. Do go through these examples because they can also come as case studies like hotel providing a package along with breakfast. Okay, it is naturally bundled. So it is a composite supply. A five-star hotel booked for a conference. This is a composite supply. So wherever there is a natural bundling of goods and services, it will be regarded as composite supply and the principal supplies rate will apply. Mixed supply, it is goods being forcefully put together and the highest rate will apply. The highest rate of that goods which has been bundled together, the highest rate will apply. Then we come to section 9. So section 7 is supply. Section 8 is mixed and composite supply. Section 9 comes to your levy section. Section 9 is the levy section. Levy, there are two type of levy of GST. There is forward levy and there is reverse charge. Now, what is forward levy? Forward levy is whereby the supplier collects the tax from the customer and then deposits it to the government. That is forward levy. Reverse charge is whereby the recipient of goods, that is the customer or the recipient of goods, will have to pay the tax directly to government. So the supplier will not collect it and deposit it to the government. Rather, the recipient of goods will have to pay the tax to the government. That is reverse charge. Okay. With respect to forward charge, GST is not applicable for certain goods and services. That is, alcohol for human consumption is kept outside GST. Then 5 petroleum products, as of now, it is outside the purview of GST. For tobacco products, both GST as well as excise applies. Okay. Now, what will be the tax applicability? GST can be divided into CGST, SGST, and IGST. Then there is an interstate movement, IGST will apply. And if it is an intrastate movement of goods, CGST and SGST will apply. And maximum GST rate can be 40%, okay, which is 2020 each. That is the maximum GST rate. 20% CGST, 20% SGST, or that 40% IGST. Reverse charge, it is very important to have an understanding about what are the goods and services for which reverse charge will apply. I'll just cover the most important ones. Supply of goods, supply of services with relation to transportation of goods, GTA. Goods transport agency services comes under reverse charge. And if the supplier of service is a GTA operator and the recipient is any person registered under GST. If you have a GST registration, RCM will apply. So the recipient who is availing the services will have to pay the tax directly to government. Advocates, any the services provided by advocate, any business entity located in the taxable territory, even though you don't have any registration, a business entity, if it has a registration or not, if it avails the services of an advocate or an advocate firm, they are required to get a registration, collect tax and pay the tax under RCM. They need not collect tax, sorry. They need to remit the tax under RCM. Okay, the supplier will not collect tax. So why I am highlighting this is there is this difference. So when you are studying RCM provisions, you need to be very clear. Here it is any person registered under GST. Any person registered under GST and certain other factors like factory, society, cooperative society, body corporate, partnership, casual taxable person. So these people, if they have not registered, they have to get themselves registered and get and they'll have to pay GST under RCM. Any person registered under GST, if it is a proprietor, if he is not registered under GST, they don't come under these provisions. So if the proprietor is registered under GST, RCM will apply. So you will have to be very, very careful and you have to note down the entities for which RCM will apply in each of the category. Okay, here if it is in furtherance of business, business entity located in the taxable territory. So if an individual is availing the services of an advocate for his personal use, GST will not apply. It's a business entity located in the taxable territory. Again, tribunal also business entity located in taxable territory. In case of sponsorship, this is quite important. Okay, sponsorship service, the supplier is any person, the recipient, if it is a body corporate or a partnership entity, then RCM will apply. So, yeah, and then this is also important, services by way of renting of immovable property. The supplier is an unregistered person and the recipient, if it is a registered person, then RCM will apply. So if there is a guest house, if a company, okay, has rented a guest house for its employees. Okay, this guest house, the owner of the guest house is an individual. So he does not have any GST registration. So the supplier of service does not have a GST registration, but the company which is availing the services is having the GST registration. So they will have to pay tax under RCM. Okay, so RCM is a little bit a tricky concept because there is a lot of things to remember. You need to know who the supplier should be and who the recipient should be. So the most important ones, you just go through the most important ones and try to understand the logic of why RCM is applicable. Because RCM is generally applicable in case of those services or those goods where the supplier generally will be an unregistered person. It will be an individual. So in order to ease um, the difficulties of a small businessmen, small professionals, RCM has been introduced, and also to reduce the amount of tax evasion. Because if these like insurance agents, if you see here, insurance agents, business facilitators. So all the supplier will generally be individuals or small professionals. So it is difficult for them to comply, a music composer, author. So it's difficult for them to comply with all the GST provisions. Whereas the recipient generally will be a bigger entity, like a music company, publisher. So the supplier is a smaller entity and the recipient being a bigger entity, the compliance provisions have been pushed to the bigger entity, which generally will be GST registered. Okay. Then RCM is also applicable in case of purchases from an unregistered person. Supply is made by an unregistered person, but this is limited to only real estate segment. Where the supplier is an unregistered person, the recipient is the promoter of a particular building. So in a real estate segment. So if they are purchasing cement or any other goods from an unregistered person, they'll have to pay tax under RCM. Again, why this concept? Because the unregistered person, the people, the persons who are supplying the raw materials for construction services generally are smaller entities compared to the recipient who is a builder, which is a bigger entity. So the compliance provisions is also shifted, and it is also aimed at reducing the tax evasion. And with respect to real estate, minimum 80% of inputs and input services should be from a registered person. So 80% they have to mandatorily buy from registered entity only. And only the 20% they can buy from unregistered entity. And for this 20% they have to pay tax under RCM. Okay. Then 9.5. So levy section will have forward levy. Then they will have RCM for specified goods and services. The list we just went through that now. Then RCM in case of purchase from an unregistered person with respect to real estate. As of now, it is applicable only in the real estate segment. And then comes your e-commerce operator. Okay, e-commerce operator, you can remember Uber, then Swiggy, Urban Clap. Okay, these are few of the segments where the services, who's the service provider here? The service provider again are smaller entities like or individuals providing services in case of Swiggy, Uber, Urban Clap. So in these cases, who's the recipient? Recipient are also unregistered persons like us who are availing these services. So both the supplier as well as the recipient are individuals who do not have access to these kind of bigger compliance requirements. They don't have the ability, or they don't have the understanding towards these compliance requirements. So the compliance requirements is shifted on the intermediary, which is the e-commerce operator. E-commerce operator are required to collect the tax from the recipient and pay it to the government. So both the supplier as well as the recipient is freed from the compliance requirement and it is shifted to the e-commerce operator. Okay. So that is applicable to uh, services by way of transportation of passengers, accommodation in hotel and inns. So you can put Ola here. Then accommodations and inns, OYO. Then housekeeping, urban clap, restaurant services like Swiggy, Zomato. So these are all covered under wherever an e-commerce operator is acting as an intermediary supplier as well as the recipient are individuals not registered under GST. The compliance burden is on the e-commerce operator. They are required to collect the tax and remit it to the government. Okay, these are the levy provisions involved. Next, we will come to zero rated supply. What is zero rated supply? Zero rated supply is export plus SEZ. Okay, supplies made by way of export or supply to SEZ units, SEZ developer, it will be considered as a zero rated supply. What are exempted? What are exempt supply? So there is a difference between zero rated supply and exempt supply. Zero rated supply is supply towards SEZs, SEZ units, SEZ developer and export. What is exempt supply? Exempt supply is your nil rated supply. Supplies which are exempted by way of a notification, okay, as per section 11 or section 6 of IGST Act, which are wholly exempt by way of a notification. So notification. And non-taxable supply. What are non-taxable supplies? We can say it is the negative list supplies. Negative list supply and supplies which are kept outside the purview of GST. These are non-taxable supplies. So all this put together will be called as exempt supply. Whereas zero rated supply is export and SEZ. This is the difference. Okay, this also you can expect as a question. What is zero rated supply and what is exempt supply? What is the difference? Okay. Exempt supplies by which has been notified. There are many goods and services. Again, logically, if you want to understand it, in case of exempted goods, it is generally the essential goods which are exempted. And in case of services also, the essential services, government services are generally exempted. Try to remember the threshold limits with respect to exemptions. Okay, for example, accommodation services having a value less than 20,000 per month, provided that the accommodation services is continuously supplied for 90 days. So any kind of accommodation services where the value is less than 20,000 per month. If the accommodation is provided continuously for 90 days, it is exempted. Then religious religious conduct of religious ceremonies or any particular rooms, renting of rooms in the religious premises, if it is limited to 1,000 rupees, more than 1,000 rupees it is taxable, less than 1,000 rupees it is exempt. And renting of premises, community halls, kalyana mandapams, if it is less than 10,000 rupees it is exempt. So these thresholds you can remember, because that can come as an MCQ question. I've just highlighted the most important ones. Okay, services provided by educational institutions are exempt. Services by way of conducting entrance exam, providing midday meals, transportation of students, vehicle, faculty, staff, everything which is connected to education, it is exempt. Then artist, services of an artist by way of performance in folk or classical art forms, music, dance, theatre. If the consideration is not more than 1,50,000, it is exempt. Next, we come to composition levy. Okay. So composition levy, what are the important factors that you have to remember is composition levy, the threshold limits. You should know threshold limit is 1.5 crores for all majority of the state. For the specified states, it is 75 lakhs. When you take the threshold limit is in the previous financial year, the aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year does not exceed the threshold limit, then a particular taxpayer or the registered person can opt for composition levy. This is applicable with respect to goods and supply of goods and restaurant service, those who are engaged completely in manufacture of goods or trading of goods. So it is applicable to three type of entities who are traders, manufacturers, or restaurant service. Okay, traders, manufacturers, restaurant service, in provided in the previous financial year they have a turnover that is limited or less than 1.5 crores, and for specified states less than 75 lakhs. Okay, if this condition is satisfied, then you can say that they are eligible to apply for payment of tax under composition scheme. Now, under composition scheme, what is the rate that is applicable? The rate with respect to manufacturers is 1%, that is 0.5% CGST SGST. For traders also, it is 1%, that is 0.5 CGST SGST. For restaurant services, it is 5%. And for other services, the limit is 50 lakhs. For other services other than restaurant services, the limit is 50 lakhs. And the rate is 6%. Okay, so I can say for manufacturers it is 1.5 crores, for traders also 1.5, and for restaurant services also it is 1.5 crores or 75 lakhs. Okay, and other services, the threshold limit is 50 lakhs and the rate is 1%, 5%, and 6%. When you consider the aggregate turnover in the previous year, what is aggregate turnover? What is the term aggregate turnover? What should be included? What should be excluded? You have to include all type of outward supplies. Any type of outward supplies, whether it is exempt or not exempt, all type of supplies should be added. What is the exemption? Exemption is with respect to interest. Interest on deposits. Okay. This we need not include. Inward supply turnover on which RCM is payable, we need not include. Okay. Inward supply turnover on which RCM is payable, we should not include logically itself. Because even though an entity pays tax, it is not our turnover. We are paying on behalf of somebody else. So inward supply, anyway, we should not include. With respect to outward supply, interest on deposits, that should not be included when you calculate the threshold limit. So say threshold limit of 1.5 and 75 lakhs and 1.5 crores is without considering the interest element. Okay. Then there are certain other conditions that you have to maintain when somebody is opting for composition levy. He has to ensure that not more than 10% of the turnover or 5 lakh rupees, they can provide other services. So any kind of other services that is provided should be limited to 5 lakh rupees or 10% of the turnover in the state or union territory in the preceding financial year. So take the preceding financial year's turnover, and the other services should not be more than 10% or 5 lakh rupees. If the other services that is being provided, so for example, a trader of automobile parts, he provides repair services also. So the income earned by way of repair services should be limited to 5 lakh rupees or 10% of their turnover, whichever is higher. If it goes beyond that, composition is not available. Then supplier of services other than a restaurant service, the threshold limit is 50 lakhs. Okay, this is the first exception or the first rule that has to be checked. Then It is not applicable for certain type of manufacturer, certain goods, certain notified goods for which composition levy is not applicable. Ice cream, pan masala, tobacco, aerated water, bricks, any type of bricks, fly ash, fossil bricks, building bricks, earthen tiles. For these, composition scheme is not available. Okay. So why this is important is that this, if you get a question on composition, they will give you one of these categories. They will say he's an ice cream manufacturer, or he's a manufacturer of fly hash bricks. He has a turnover of only 1 crore in the previous year. He provides other services which is limited to 5 lakh. Whether composition levy will apply. So you have to say composition levy will not apply because they are the manufacturer of fly hash bricks. He's not covered under composition scheme, so composition scheme will not apply. Or you will get a question where the manufacturer is providing other services which comes to about 20% of the previous year's turnover. So you should know that the limit is 10% or 5 lakh, whichever is higher. So composition scheme will not apply for that person. So exceptions are very important because the questions will be testing your exceptions. You will know by default, everyone who is going to write the exam, I think if they have gone through the book, they will know what is composition. But what you will not know is the intricacies for what it is not applicable. What are the exceptions? And that is where the question will be pointing on towards the exceptions. Restrictions in case of composition scheme, you cannot provide intra-state supply. Intra-state supply of services is not allowed. And through e-commerce operated supplies through e-commerce operator is also not allowed. He should not be a casual tax payable person. He should not be a non-resident taxable person. Okay, so these interstate is not allowed. Export is not allowed with respect to composition. E-commerce operator, supply of services through an e-commerce operator is not allowed. This you have to note. Any kind of, composition dealer can do only an intra-state supply. They cannot do intrastate supply. They cannot do an export. They cannot do supply of services through an e-commerce operator. And the composition scheme, once you have taken, it applies to the entire ban. So all the states, you will have to go with composition scheme only. And when the day when the turnover exceeds the threshold limit, the very next day, the registered person has to convert himself into a normal taxpayer person, and he should start collecting and remitting tax under the normal tax scheme. Okay, lapse of the action option is from the very day, effective from the day in which the aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit. So you can get an MCQ question: when should a composition dealer register himself under normal scheme or convert himself to normal scheme if his threshold limit on 6/10/25 exceeds 1.5 crores. So if it exceeds 1.5 crores on 6/10, from 7/10/2025 onwards, he should start collecting and remitting tax under normal scheme, and he should also apply for a conversion to normal scheme. Okay. So these are the important points with respect to composition levy. So we'll discuss few questions. Maybe we'll take about 10 minutes, discuss a few questions. State whether the following supply should be treated as supply of goods or supply of service as per Schedule 2 of CGST Act. Works contract. So I can say that works contract service will be regarded as supply of service because property, the title and the goods are not being transferred. Renting of immovable property, again service, because I am only taking it on rent. The property and the goods are not being transferred. Transfer of right in goods without transfer of title. Again, title is not being transferred, so it will be a service. Job work, again, title or not being transferred will be a service. Temporary transfer or permitting the use of enjoyment of an intellectual property. There is only a temporary transfer. The title is not being transferred, so it is a service. Next, Mr. Ram received a design service for his personal use and he paid $500 as professional fees to Mr. Shyam in USA. So Ram, where is he? He's providing he has received a design service for his personal use. It is personal use. Okay. He has paid a consideration to Mr. Shyam in USA. Explain whether the aforesaid activity of import of service is considered as supply under Section 7 of CGST Act. Okay, so Section 7 of CGST Act, the exemption is with respect to import of service for a consideration whether or not in furtherance of business, it will be treated as a supply. So here there is an import of service. There is a consideration. Whether or not in furtherance of business, it is a supply. So this is a supply. Is there any change in your opinion if they are brothers and there is no consideration? So what is the second exception say? Supply of service, import of service for a consideration whether or not in furtherance of business. For a consideration. So if there is no consideration means the conditions are not being satisfied. So it is not a supply. Then further, there is any change in your opinion if they are brothers and there is no consideration and such design is for business purpose. So then where will we go? First supply section does not apply. We need to check the two exceptions. Okay. So here it is for business purpose. So where will we go? We will go to the deemed supply concept. Brothers, related party. So related party transactions when it is for furtherance of business, even though consideration is not involved, it is a supply. So related party transaction, we have to check if whenever there is a related party, check if it is for business purpose. Related party, business purpose, consideration is there or not, it is a supply. Okay, related party, not for business purpose, no consideration, then it is not a supply. Okay. So that particular section 7 is very important. You need to understand section 7 very well to understand GST to have a link of all the elements of GST. We'll go to the third question. Toothpaste is supplied along with toothbrush as a single unit for a single price. So you have to say whether it is a composite supply or a mixed supply. Toothpaste can be sold separately. Toothbrush can be sold separately also. So it is a mixed supply because it is forcefully bundled. Supply of package consisting of canned foods, sweets, chocolates, dry foods, aerated water. Again, all of this can be sold separately also. So it is a mixed supply. Supply of laptop with warranty and pre-installed Windows. I would say it is a composite supply because laptop supply comes with warranty. You cannot sell the warranty separately for a price. So it is a composite supply. Food supplied to inpatients as advised by the doctor. So we cannot go and have the food in a hospital just like that. Right? It is available only to the inpatients as advised by the doctor. So it is a composite supply. Hotel provides a 4-day, 3-night package facility with breakfast. Again, it is a composite supply. R Limited, a manufacturer of cosmetic products, supplied a package consisting of body oil, body lotion, shampoo, soap. The price is 750. 15,000 packages were supplied by the company. Determine the nature of supply and what is the GST liability. So it is these type of questions that you will get in case study. So first thing you have to identify what type of supply it is. It is a mixed supply because you can sell body oil, body lotions, shampoo separately also. So it's a mixed supply. In case of mixed supply, highest rate will apply. What is the highest rate? 28%. So for the entire package of 750 rupees, 28% will apply. So 50,000 into 750, it is 1.12 into 28%, 31 lakhs. That is the tax liability. Okay. State which of the following supplies, state in which schedule the following supplies are being covered. Sale of land. Sale of land is a negative list item. Goods forming part of business assets and are transferred by the business so as no longer forms part of an asset without consideration. It comes under supply of goods schedule 2. I'll just go through the negative list items. So that is services by way of a code, services by way of an employer and employee, okay, services of funeral, burial, transportation. These are negative list item. Anything that is not covered under negative list, either it will be in schedule 1 or schedule 2. So how you can remember is, remember the negative list 8 items, remember the items of schedule 1, which is deemed supply. Anything that does not fall under 1 and 3 will definitely be under schedule 2. Yeah, then we'll go to this illustration. Discuss whether the following person are eligible for composition levy in a financial year. So you need to know the conditions of composition levy. What is the threshold limit for what are the notified goods for which composition levy does not apply, and what is the component, the percentage of service element that can be allowed for manufacturers and traders. Okay, these three important points. And then it is applicable only for intrastate supply. Interstate supply, composition levy cannot be applied. Okay, these 4 points you should remember. Mrs. Quality Ice Cream Limited, Bangalore, engaged in the business of manufacturing ice cream, has shown an aggregate turnover. So ice cream manufacturers, composition levy does not apply. Robbie Collection, a registered dealer from Arunachal Pradesh, has reported intrastate turnover of goods of 125 lakhs, that is 1 crore 25 lakhs for the financial year 23-24. So for Arunachal Pradesh, it is a specified state and the threshold limit is 75 lakhs. So composition levy will not apply. Mercy's Art Collection, a registered dealer from Chennai, has reported an export turnover of 30 lakhs and a domestic turnover of 75 lakhs. They are expecting the same trend in the next financial year also. Composition dealer cannot export goods. So if they are expecting the same trend, they are expecting an export in the next financial year also, then they cannot go for composition scheme. Mercy's Komal wants to sell taxable goods in an exhibition organized for a week in Assam. She does not have any fixed place of business in Assam and she is participating in an exhibition. Casual taxpayers, non-resident taxpayers cannot go for composition. So if she is participating in an exhibition, she is not having a permanent place of business, she is a casual taxpayer. Casual taxable person cannot exercise to pay tax under composition scheme. MSPL has 2 branches. One branch is in Rajasthan, another is in Delhi. Rajasthan opts for normal scheme. However, company wants to opt for composition under Delhi branch. Again, it is not possible because if for one PAN, you can go for one scheme only. Either go for normal scheme or go for composition scheme for all the branches across India. Okay, so you can see the trend of the question. So it is mainly concentrating on the exceptions. What are the exceptions? So whenever you study any section, give more importance to what are the exceptions to that common rule. There is a common rule and there are exceptions to the common rule. You should be aware of the exceptions to the common rule. Okay. So with this, we'll close the class for today. Any questions? Yes, Yogalakshmi.
Yes, today's part only I have a question. For those notified goods you told like pan masala, tobacco products and all, GST cess will be applicable. In addition to that, is GST applicable?
GST is applicable. GST and GST cess. So GST is the base tax.
Okay.
GST cess is a tax on tax. Just like
Okay.
income tax. For income tax, you are calculating my income tax is XYZ amount, and then 4% health and education cess.
Okay.
Right? There is a cess. Cess is a tax on tax.
Okay.
So on tobacco products, GST is
Not
applicable, GST cess is applicable, and separately excise duty is also applicable.
Okay. So for all of this notified goods, even excise duty is also
No, no,
applicable
no,
in.
no, no. Notified goods, only GST and GST cess. Only for tobacco, you have GST, GST cess, and excise duty.
Excise duty. Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Sure, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so tomorrow we'll join at the same time. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.